Yeah. This morning, I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask if there's a disclosure of interest. As there is none, we have an agenda that has been put forth to us previous to today, and I'm going to need a unanimous council decision because this is a special meeting to add one more item to the agenda, which is the attendance at the Thunder Bay District Municipal League Conference that's happening, I believe, in March. Is the council in agreement to adding that on the agenda? Could I have unanimous consent? Councillor Viss and Councillor. Okay, everyone's got their hand up. Okay, all righty. So I have a resolution moved and seconded to adopt the agenda with the addition of the attendance regarding the attendance at the Thunder Bay District Municipal League Conference in March. Anything further to add? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So the first item we have today is the draft fire department enabling bylaw. We're going to pass it to our fire chief and go through this from page 3 to 38. And we'll just let you take the lead, Sean. Did you push your?
Thank you. So yeah, the enabling bylaw, just to give a little bit of history, this is what gives the fire department the authority and direction from council to perform the duties that we do. So it is kind of a key document for us. A couple of things to keep in mind when we're going through this is that this is our current enabling bylaw is 2010. So we're pushing 15 years. So it is due for an overhaul. The fire master plan that we did a couple of years ago identified that there are some holes in the enabling bylaw and recommended a review to be done. Shared services through the LRMC, that group recommended that we start looking at shared services, and really the enabling bylaw for everybody taking part in shared services is really the foundation to what we're doing. If we're going to start sharing our services back and forth, we have to be on the same page with respect to an enabling bylaw or with respect to the direction from councils. So to give an example, if we start sharing training, all of our training has to be to the level of service, and therefore the level of service has to be consistent across. So if one department isn't doing a certain function, then if we're going to share training, it complicates. So we're going to do training for this department, training for this department, and there's really no efficiencies or benefits to doing it that way. So that's the foundation, is to get us all on the same page, same authority, same direction from councils to start sharing those services. And I'm going to get into more of that as we go through. The other key point is that certification for firefighters is really driving enabling bylaws to get updated. The level of training or certification that we are required to do it should be based on the level of service the council directs us to do. In other words, if we are going to do interior attack, council has to say, yes, we want to provide that service. And then we have to train/certify to that level of service. So there is a level of service in the current enabling bylaw, but it's very vague. We're going to do fire suppression. We're going to do auto extrication. So in terms of training and certification, when it's vague like that, we don't really have clear direction as to what we're doing. So that's a key part in there. The other thing to keep in mind is that this is a first draft for the enabling bylaw. There was municipalities through the LRMC that worked together on this bylaw. So it wasn't me writing it. It was a group of us that went through and had several meetings to say, yes, we agree with that. That should be in there. This shouldn't be in there. And the basis was a enabling bylaw that St. Clair had put together. Shunya, the fire chief from Shunya, Chief Arthur, found the enabling bylaw. We felt that it was a good base to start. So that's what we modeled everything in here on that enabling bylaw. So as we go through this, you're gonna notice there's things in there that should be changed or we have to question. That's the intent of this meeting, so that this draft went to all the councils, and then they're gonna do the same thing. Yeah, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna change the wording and things like that. So that's the intent of this.
Municipalities are area that have not proved this, new bylaw. Well, what happens in the future when it comes to parent services in the higher region?
So I don't know that I can answer that question clearly at this point. Where I see it going is that if they're asked, this is gonna tighten up the mutual aid. Mutual aid is supposed to be reciprocating. So for example, if one department is not gonna provide technical extrication, they call us, that's not mutual aid if we provide that service. At this point, I'm not gonna say we're not going, but the direction that this whole program, if you will, it's going to that way to say, look, if you will provide it, but it's gonna be fee for service or some other agreement in place to deal with that.
That would be separate.
Yeah, and it references it in the enabling bylaw here that there's gonna be a whole bunch of agreements that are put in place, so it's not like I'm getting free rein to do whatever I want. If we're gonna share services with a training officer, for example, we're gonna develop an agreement that outlines who's doing what's the trade-off. You know, if we do something at a fee for service model, it doesn't necessarily mean money. It might mean that we're gonna do technical rescue, you guys are gonna do rope rescue, and we share that back and forth. So instead of all of us doing all of it, we start specializing and helping each other.
Thanks, Sean. I just had a question. On the corporate report, it says the draft enabling bylaw is a product of the fire chiefs of Shunya, O'Connor, Conmee, and Oliver Papunj. Nebing is not in on this?
So Nebing came to a couple of the first meetings, and then at one point they said they were doing their own thing with the enabling bylaw, which that's their prerogative. So they didn't, I don't know where they're at with their enabling bylaw, what they've done. I know they've done work with their council. Gillies came to the first meeting and didn't come to any other ones. So maybe I'm going down a path I shouldn't by calling it out, but I want it to be clear that if you're not taking part in the shared services and the work that is getting put into this, I really don't think they should be reaping the benefits of it. So that's why I highlighted that.
Just to, I guess we're probably jumping ahead ourselves, but I've been concerned about that shared services. We provide way better service in our municipality compared to other municipalities because they don't have the capabilities to do that. So should that shared service not be completely out of this bylaw and we just deal with our municipality and then have a separate bylaw dealing outside of our municipality? I don't know how you're gonna tie them together when no one has the capabilities out in the rural municipality as Oliver Papunj. So how are you gonna tie that into in one bylaw?
So, my opinion on it is that this enabling bylaw gives me the authority through the council to start entertaining shared services. I don't know how it's gonna come together as we move forward in terms of, you know, we got more capacity than another municipality does for sure. But in the future, I can see that it's gonna help us, even though we can do more of this, we can get more help in this area from another municipality. And there, like I say, there's gonna be agreements that are put in place, but yeah, I mean, I could be wrong on it, and if we want to go down a path of having a separate bylaw on shared services, then we can entertain that, I guess, but this is where we came with respect to going down that path.
For myself, there's confusion. Shared services and mutual aid.
Yes,
It's not the same thing. Shared services is if you have some municipality out here has one very good person at, you know, entry information into the fire program, then that person may be doing it for all of us if that's the final agreement. But mutual aid is when we get called out So, we've got a fire or whatever it may be, an accident in another municipality, that's mutual aid.
That's right, and it's reciprocating.
Yeah.
So the issue now is that a lot of help comes, and it's on our shoulders many times, not always, because there are other municipalities that are doing it, but it's technically not mutual aid. So as an example, if a municipality does not have a tanker and they call us for mutual aid, quotations, for water supply, that's not mutual aid, because they can't resupply a tanker for us. Where it gets deep is when we get into certification and the level of service. And I've brought it up many times. So if we're a full service fire department, authorized to do interior attack and interior rescue, for example. If we get called to ConMe, for example, in their exterior attack, then we're not authorized to do interior attack there. And if we call them for mutual aid, because if their enabling bylaw says it's exterior attack only, they cannot do interior attack with us, even though they're fully certified to do it. And that question got posed by another department at that meeting where the deputy fire marshal was at. So we each have to follow our own enabling bylaws. That really complicates the mutual aid system, because who do I call for help if we're interior and we're the only department aside from the city of Thunder Bay to do interior attack?
I guess you see, that's where my problem, right? It's our volunteers. Prime example. Our municipality fire department went past 2 other municipalities to fight a fire on a highway. How much do we expect out of our volunteers? We're gonna kill them. Look at the calls we're getting now. Do you want to continue to do that at the rate we're doing it? I think we're going the wrong direction. We're asking way too much for our volunteers. I would like to see them all sitting at the table and say, hey, are you okay to do that? Are you willing to do those calls? As a volunteer, I may not want to go to Gillis, or I may not want to go to ConMe, or just whatever. Wait a minute, I signed up for our Papoose Fire Department. And that's where I keep coming back, because I have a bit of experience of a number of years on the fire department. That gets to be a chore, because you didn't sign for that. So I don't know where you're going. So I think we need to have way more input from all the fire departments. Say, hey, guys, as we're putting a plan together, that's going to affect you, not the 5 of us around this table. We're going to pass this, but they got to do the work. And that's where I have a problem. We need to volunteers to say, yes, we're willing to do that. If not, we better be looking at this again.
So and that's a valid point, two comments to that. We can't stand on an island because we can't do it ourselves as it is. So we need help from other municipalities. We are the most capable, but that doesn't mean that we don't need help from other municipalities. So, you know, in that sense that we do need to reciprocate and work with the other municipalities, or we are going to be on an island where we have nobody to call for help on. This enabling bylaw with everybody on the same page will start leveling that playing field to deal with, so that we're not getting called out so much to another municipality to do because they don't have a functioning fire department. This forces other municipalities to evaluate their fire department and whether there's capacity there to do what their enabling bylaw says they're going to do. So it's kind of, I understand the workload on there. Volunteers have the option to not respond. That's, if they can't make it, they can't make it. But we really, if we just focus on ourselves and having us do our own thing inside, we are going to be on an island, and we're not going to have support from other municipalities.
So this enabling bylaw will be a decision of this council, well, after we've gone through this a few times, as to what we expect from Oliver Papoose Fire Department and volunteers and first response. I'm not sure if first response are in there
It's
too.
in there.
But every other municipality around us is going to have their own enabling bylaw too. And it could have some of those things not in there that we have in ours.
Yeah, so the
So that
intent,
when there's a call out, you will have everyone's enabling bylaw, or the fire department will, so our fire department will know what level they can work at or do things in the other municipalities. And that's all you can give for shared service, for for mutual
Mutual aid, that's right. So
mutual
this,
aid. Anything further than that would be a shared service, which would be a cost. It's yeah, it's
so yes, this puts us all on a leveling
Yeah.
playing field, if it will, so that we know we're all trained, we're all doing the same thing. And then shared services from that point can start getting some traction. Training
For the agreement.
officers, data collection, reports to the OFL, like all that kind of stuff. But this is really the foundation on it.
Mhm.
And the enabling bylaw is for us to provide service in our
it's
municipality.
for ours, yes.
And the hope is that the other LRMC municipalities are doing the same thing. So now we're all on the same playing field. Now we can start moving forward and dealing with issues like yours, Councillor Viss, where we're not doing all the work for everybody. It's very clear in here that if you're not taking part in it, you're not taking part of it, which is your prerogative. But then don't call us for help, and we're going to get very sticky on reciprocating services.
So, the worst case scenario. You get a call from another municipality outside of area that does exterior fighting only. So we arrive, because that's what we're gonna do, and you hear somebody screaming in that house. You're not gonna go in? I don't know. And if you do, if something happens and a fireman loses his life, who's responsible? Who's gonna take the liability? Like, you're getting into something here, folks, that we better be awful careful with. I'll tell you that right now. I don't know, would I go in? Probably. Is it right? No, because you're not supposed to do that. How are you gonna handle that?
So I've said it many times, the OFM's response is going to be you follow your enabling bylaw, which is easy on paper, but it turns into a moral question. If we show up and we've got trained people, I'm not going to be able to stop them. But when you start talking about liability, we're in much deeper water right now because it's not clear. And it's not clear with respect to different enabling bylaws, who can do what, all that kind of, it's just never been dealt with in the past. This starts dealing with that by putting it on there. And when we get into the services, it's pretty clear. So even if ConMe, as an example, only has 2 people show up, they can't do interior attack because they don't meet the criteria. If we show up with 5 people, now they meet the criteria, now we can do something as a collective. And it's no different than us. If we show up with 4 people, we don't meet the requirements to do certain functions. We may need ConMe or O'Connor. They may be coming through the municipality going home from work. So this starts dealing with that liability issue. And the liability is going to fall on my shoulders as the fire chief and your people as the council of the municipality. So this is trying to address that. It's the first step. It's not the end of the road in terms of what we have to do, but this is at least laying that foundation so that we can start going down that path.
So. there's a
Oh,
question.
sorry.
So
We've got Councillor
none of
Coyle.
this really kicks in then until everyone gets on board with this enabling bylaw. Only those that come up with an enabling bylaw will be involved in this then, these other municipalities.
Yeah, so moving to the next step,
Yeah.
if there's a municipality that's not, they've got something totally different, then, I mean, the whole thing is that you can't, if we don't all have the same foundation, it makes it very difficult to start sharing and even responding
Mhm.
to other emergencies. So this lays that foundation. And if other municipalities are not following through with this, then we have to have the discussion and say, okay, what are we doing with this? And I can see it in the future coming down to in writing to say, this is the level that you're providing under mutual aid. This is what we're going to do. And we shall not do this. We shall not do that. Is that going to stop the moral I'm going in there? No, but at least it offers protection to the fire chief, both fire chiefs and the councils that are involved with it.
Yeah, I've spoke with Sean quite a bit about this. And my understanding of it, if you look at the Schedule B in here on, I guess it's page 14 or 43 at the bottom. That's the approved services and programs. And then there's Schedule C, which is again, the training schedule. So my understanding is that this idea about uniformity, if you look there at the top, it says basic firefighting services. I think every municipality that's going to be eligible for mutual aid with us has to have that. Like if they're going to be doing it, it's got to be written pretty well, that's it. And if the person that comes from another municipality is going to be doing pumper operator, then in the mutual aid agreement, they have to be saying that their people have that training.
Mhm.
So that prevents our fire chief or whoever happens to be the fire chief at the scene from saying, do you got your cert? Do you got your cert? In the mutual aid, it would say, you got your cert.
Yeah, for us to provide that service, you've got to be certified pumper operator.
And in your mutual aid agreement, you have to be saying, yep, we're in this mutual aid agreement. Our people are trained to do it. And our enabling bylaw, if we're doing whatever it is, rural firefighting operations, we're doing it as it states on page 15 of 43. That's what we got in our thing too.
And we need all the municipalities to be on the same page on it. Now, the other thing I didn't mention is that this is the municipalities, the 6. There's still a whole raft of NFPP departments that are out there. Once we get municipalities on the same page, our intent, and I'm speaking our because it's the chief group, is to look at what's the legal framework for NFPP departments to have them fit into this, because they're different. They don't have an enabling bylaw. They get their direction from the Office of the Fire Marshal. So they've got different rules in terms of what gives them authority to do things. And my going through this whole exercise, I've learned that nobody really, or very few people really understand the framework that we're supposed to be operating under. It's because it's been so long where we're just going down a path. Nobody's been looking into what the legal requirements are. And when you talk about liability, if I don't have authority to do something, the first question is why are you doing that? Who gave you the authority to do that? I'll give an example with fire investigation. Under the fire code, I'm the only person with the authority to enter a building to do a fire investigation. It's right in the act. I can delegate that authority, and I've done that in writing to say these people are authorized. What was happening is what firefighters were in doing investigations, they would go to court and they'd say, what gave you the authority to go in that building? Well, I was doing an investigation. The only person is the fire chief that's authorized to do that. Where's your delegation to give you there is none. Out the window it goes.
Mhm. Yes, Councillor Viss?
All right, then that's where I came from liability and I'm glad Wayne brought that up. If you look under that approved service and program, all right, you're going out of our municipality. A scene risk assessment has been completed, okay, by I don't know who. You say you are the only one, and the level of risk reasonably justifies entry into the structure. What if you're not there? Who's going to take the responsibility for that?
So if you go up one segment, service shall be provided only when, in the opinion of the fire chief or most senior officer in
That's correct.
charge.
Who is the senior officer? Who
Whoever-
determines that? You see, you gotta be so careful on liability because people today, they grab you wherever they can on their liability here. This is lives involved in this issue here.
So the most senior officer in charge, so if I'm not there and the deputy chief is there, he's the most senior officer.
He's not.
Then it goes down to the next most senior officer. And if they're not there, it goes to the next most senior firefighter. And that's in our process now, and that's how we operate. It's the most senior person on scene is always responsible.
You know, I keep thinking back on my own thing. Okay, when I was on for instance, there's Bernie as a fireman, Dan was out there, and so the three of us go to the fire, and that's what in most cases happened those days because we're the only ones there. Who's the senior officer? I am going to take the responsibility and say, Bernie, you go in there because there's somebody there. No way. Why would I take my liability to that extent? You know, I get so nervous on this liability stuff. That's all. And maybe I'm overdoing it. I don't know, but I really get nervous on that. If it ever happened, Lord help you.
So I guess to respond to that, it's accepted in the fire service that you know, based on your level of seniority or authorization within that fire department, you take on responsibility. And maybe there's a number of people that don't understand that responsibility or that liability. And that's something that we would have to work on, obviously. But I mean, it's pretty clear that if I'm not there and deputy fire chief is there, they're responsible. It's right in the job spec.
Oh,
It's
yes.
right in, so if there's a misunderstanding of what that means, then we've got to do some training for it. But, you know, this gives us the framework to do that. And if somebody's not comfortable to do it, then they make the assessment. I'm not comfortable with somebody going in, and that's what it says you do.
Okay.
And if it's a firefighter that doesn't have the experience, then the direction is err on the side of caution. If you can't do a risk assessment, then it's no go, period. So right now, when enabling bylaws are generic and open, there's a view that gives us more flexibility to do things, which is correct. But it also gives you more flexibility to hang yourself. So by defining it in here, and if you don't meet those criteria, then the decision should be easy. Where we get into trouble, to your point, is if people don't understand these and they're not following it, which is, you could have the most ironclad system in place, but if somebody doesn't understand it and apply it appropriately, then that's gonna be an issue, for sure.
Councillor Peacock.
You made mention to NFPP. Can you tell us what is that like the
That's the-
unincorporated areas?
Incorporated. I've been told that's not the right way to refer to them now,
Okay.
but they're the Northern Fire Protection Teams.
Okay.
So CAM, East Gorham, Nalulu. There's, out of the 11 fire departments in the zone, half of them are NFPP departments. And they've got different structures. They could be incorporated and run through a fire board. They could report directly to a services board. So there's a bunch of different mixes, if you will. That's why I didn't want to get them into this, because they're all different, basically.
And funded differently.
Yes. Yeah, some of them raise their own money. They are funded through the province for certain equipment. Okay, so maybe we'll go through this enabling bylaw with it's in here, keeping in mind that it's a draft. When I did go through it, I did pick up some more mistakes that should have been taken out of it, but. So just the first is anything that's highlighted in yellow. You'll notice, because this, all of us put together, we all have to put our own stuff in there. So corporation of the municipality of XXX, that's, okay. The whereas, those are all basically the legal, I guess,
Jargon?
yeah, jargon, sure. Two things that are in here that we have to do work on, I'm gonna say, are the fee schedules and cost recovery. We still have to do some work on that to streamline it. The definitions that are in here, many of the definitions are right out of this enabling bylaw, our current one. And it's just important to know that just because there's a definition in here, it does not mean that it's part of enabling bylaw. So as an example, we've got deputy fire chief, fire prevention, deputy fire chief training. Some of the other municipalities have multiple deputy chiefs. We currently have one. So they're in there as definition, just to cover everybody off so that we all understand that a deputy chief of fire prevention, this is what their role is. So that's why they're in there. And I just noticed that I think we have to add some wording. So deputy fire chief of fire prevention, there should be some wording in there to say that this is their umbrella, if you will. Okay. A firefighter is down there. We added to that somewhat. It used to just say volunteer firefighter, but we added paid on call firefighter, officer, medical first responder, and auxiliary member, just because they are currently they are classed as volunteer firefighters for us, but it wasn't clear in this bylaw. And it's important that they are identified as firefighters because that's where the WSIB coverage comes in. Okay. And then
We don't have auxiliary, though, do we?
we are working towards getting auxiliary. So, you know, from a certification standpoint, if we have people that are at this stage of their career where they're not going to be certified pumper operators, but they still have a DZ license, the intent is to have an auxiliary membership that has a minimum amount of training that could drive a tanker truck. So they would be classed as an auxiliary member at that point. Scribes, people to help with rehab, stuff like that, we would put them into an auxiliary member role. Fire Protection Services, that was expanded a bit to kind of deal with the different functions that we're going to do in those fire protection services. So I don't think there's anything alarming in that. Fit for duty.
Can I just stop you there for a minute? The carbon monoxide, do we have testers on trucks
Yes.
that we can go in?
Yeah.
Oh,
We've got
good.
4 gas units. We gotta get a couple more this year, but we do have 4 gas units to
Okay.
alarm.
Thank you.
Councillor Peacock?
Thank you. One other question with regard to the deputy fire chiefs. Is it only the fire prevention that is mandatory as far as the office of the fire marshal?
So technically, by the code, a municipality does not have to have a fire department. They can choose to have a fire department. If they do, then they have to have an enabling bylaw and establish it. So that's where that authority comes in. Technically, all a municipality has to have is a public education program, which is under fire prevention, and a smoke alarm program. So technically, we don't need to have a fire department. Now, there is a fire department that is established. I don't know how that goes backwards. But if you read the act, it says that we don't have to have a fire department. You can choose to contract it out. You can choose to just have a public education program with a smoke alarm. So yeah, that's basically the two. I guess that's one of the points to bring up is that if the council decides to have a fire department, then we have to outline what they're doing and it has to be supported to be able to provide that function. And there were several meetings in the past where I've mentioned that if it can't be funded or if it's going too far, then one of the options is to get out of the game. Contracted, say, hey, City of Thunder Bay, will just like the police give you $1 million and we want you to respond. Could go to a surrounding municipality to do it, or we could put money into just a robust public education program. So. Fit for duty, that was added in there just, with respect to PTSD and mental health. So that's more of that than it is coming to work intoxicated, but that is part of it. Okay, level of service on the next page. It basically says whatever's outlined in level B. This is a critical thing with respect to the certification, which, as you know, is legislated. And the legislation comes into effect in mid-2026. So we have to be trained and certified to the level of service that council directs us to be.
When I was reading this, they talked about impeding entrances or access. If anyone has I'm just thinking, if anyone has a driveway that one of your units cannot get into or go drive through, are they notified or given a little letter or do you even look around for it?
At this point, we don't look around for it. If we respond to an incident where we have issues,
Yeah.
then I will talk to the homeowner and say, look at this, you need to widen this or whatever. But
Okay.
we currently, going to workloads, we don't have the people
No.
power to be able to.
Yeah, like I'm just, suggesting, I know that we've had some people that got entrance permits and they were out. I think it was tested to see if the truck could get up there because it was quite of an incline in Kekabeka. And you had said that they passed or whatever, but I also know people who like planting trees. And then one day you can barely see down the driveway. So I just wondering, you've got big trucks now.
So, and that's that's part of, I guess, where this kind of stuff is going, is that due diligence says we should be looking at that stuff. But again, according
Yeah.
to volunteers and a municipality of our size, it's a lot of work to be able to do it. And then we have to have the authority, if you will, to be able to say, you got to clean that out
Yeah.
for us to get down there. So it starts, this is a very big,
Yeah. But it's also something we can use our newsletter for, eh? Like one big thing a month or something, like
Mm.
caution, if your driveway's not this or this,
I-
we
I-
can't get down, we can't fight your fire.
I do it in the wintertime with snow levels and fire numbers. It's in the Chiefs Corner stuff, so it is addressed.
Hmm?
I'm not certain, but I imagine if you are getting insurance, you probably have questions like that on your insurance form.
Not
Can,
that I've ever seen on my insurance
well, the
policy.
insurance company should be adding it then.
Yeah.
I've never seen it. but-
Yeah, so in here, when it talks about it, it's giving us, I don't wanna say an out, but
Right,
it's saying that it's up to you as a homeowner. If I can't get my truck down your driveway and your house burns down, it says right in there that that's on your shoulders, not
Mhm.
mine. So, and really the issue with this comes not when it's put in, it's usually 10 years down the road when everything's growing
Mhm.
in and they want some seclusion.
well, we have some homes that I know in my area that are pretty high levels with a pretty high, long driveway, and I've often thought in the winter, will that fire truck ever get up there? I don't know.
No.
Al?
The only thing to start it off to make sure is when the entrance permit comes in, that it passes by the fire department and say, I don't know how many feet you need, but let's set a standard, whatever you need. And then that's an automatic, then you see, then our director of operation will know, that entrance isn't wide enough. So I think the two of you need to get together. At least the new ones will be covered from there on. What happens afterwards, yes, of course. But anyway,
Yeah.
just to start,
And a lot of that is dealt with through the building code
okay?
with respect to access for fire.
Okay, that's good.
So just, I don't know if there's anything else going down through it. W, I've noticed it's in there twice, so that's gotta get moved. Standards, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that, we get measured now based on an accepted standard, and the big one that, we follow or we get measured to is NFPA. So this basically just says that we're gonna do our best to meet the various NFPA standards that are out there. And that's where we're gonna get measured if something goes sideways. Section 21 guidance notes are in there. And then shared services, the AA, really this is brand new for everybody and the chiefs, we all kind of struggle on how to word what this is, but that's basically where we came up with. So working together to meet common goals. Many of the functions of the fire service are the same across departments and municipalities, such as common and standard operating guidelines, training lesson plans, response protocols, all that kind of stuff. The intent of the bylaw is to allow fire departments to work together to reduce common workload, reduce operating costs, and provide consistent levels of service to the ratepayers. That's really what shared service is about. And again, the enabling bylaw, in my opinion, gives us the foundation to start working towards that.
But there again, if I just may, you say again, the standard operating guidelines, fine, I appreciate that, but training lessons is completely different from one fire department to the next.
You're absolutely right. Right now it is. And what we're trying to do is streamline them based on this so that we can start in my opinion, it's a waste to me write a lesson plan for ladders. Shunya write a lesson plan for ladders.
Mhm.
Why not one of us write it
Yeah.
and we all use it?
Mhm.
And that's easy to say, but then it has to match with what your enabling bylaw is telling you can do. So if we're doing interior search and rescue as a lesson, then everybody's gonna be trained to that same process so that when we do get together on a big call, I know I can say, yes, these guys are trained to the same level as us. They're trained the same way, so there's gonna be no surprises with them doing something different. So this sets the foundation to be able to start sharing that. I have been approached by one of the municipalities already to share a training officer. And my first response was, I'm totally into that. We do double up on all this. But we have to get on the same page with what we're training, same page with respect to tracking, training records, the lesson plans, the data entry, all that all has to be the same for us to really take advantage of the shared service on it.
Councillor Peacock?
Thank you. Would you then bill the other department for, say they're using our training officer? Or is it all kind of across the board? Or would you find that your department is then being asked to wear too many hats to share with other departments? Or
So,
would that come under the fee schedule and?
so that's, a legitimate question, and I haven't even gotten that far, and none of us chiefs have gotten that far. The intent is that it's not all on the shoulders of one department. So it might be that we take care of the SOGs, and then when we write one, it goes to the group that's working and they implement it. And the other group does the training plans. And that's how we share back and forth, so that, because right now I have to write SOGs, I have to write lesson plans. I'm saying I as the fire department. So does Blair, so does Conmy, so does, like, all the municipalities have to do the same thing. And why? I don't get it myself. Why don't I write the SOGs for everybody? Why doesn't Shunya do the lesson plans for everybody? And then we're taking advantage of the workload, and we're not all doing redundant work. That's the intent of it. So is there money changing hands? I have no idea. Can't even go that far. But I will say, I will not be doing all the work. Again, the fire department, I am not doing all the work for all the other municipalities. I'm just not gonna do it. So I don't know if that answers your question on it, but
Yeah, and they've got like, Shunya too, they have a very qualified fire chief, so there's no reason some of the work can't be done by that gentleman or whomever. I'm sure that
that's correct. And
all can do something.
and those of us that are talking regularly, we're all, I don't want to use the word complaining, but we're complaining because we don't have time to do what we have to do. And part of it's because we're all doing the same thing, but different. You know, if I have to spend 2 days writing an SOG, then Blair, Chief and Shunya has to spend 2 days writing a same SOG, but a little bit different. And then Greg, the chief in O'Connor, is doing the same thing. And it's just like, if we're all on the same page, here, this is what we've come up with. It meets the intent of the enabling bylaw. Get it passed, however your process is to get it passed. And now we know we're all on the same page with what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
So. Okay, the department structure, this is a little bit of a different layout. Ours was pretty simple in the first one. But again, you know, the highlighted deputy chief of fire prevention, we're just going to put in whatever the structure is within each municipality, and that can change with no impact on this. I will say that I did not put in a structure in here. Our current org chart or structure in the fire department in the fire master plan really identified that it's not a workable structure, because it's basically me down to the deputy chief and then down to everybody else. And then a span of control that's really not set up properly. So there is going to be some work on the org chart with respect to that span of control. And I didn't include it in here because I think the feasibility study may impact that org chart. So that is still in a bit of a limbo. Once we get through the feasibility study and get some direction with that, then the org chart will be laid out based on that. So shared services, you know, again, this is a key part to this enabling bylaw. And really what it is it's council giving the fire chief authorization to start working towards shared services. So, you know, first one was surrounding are authorized by their council or governing body through an approved enabling bylaw to take part in shared services. And a part of this is that I don't think any of us should be doing a whole bunch of work if it's just a no-go from council standpoint. Likes levels of service, that's so we're on the same page. And then the third one talks about shared service agreements that shall be part of the enabling bylaw. None of those are in here, but I added that in there so that it's not, like I said earlier, a free check for me to just go start doing things. So if the chiefs start working on a training officer and we put an agreement together that's going to be, we think is workable, then it comes to council to say, this is what we're looking at doing. And it'll be a separate agreement, if you will, to outline. And it's going to say who's doing what, You know, what's the exchange back and forth, laying parameters? If we start sharing a training officer, who do they report to? Like all that kind of stuff will be in an agreement that we put in place. And then B is really the intent of this is that is like I said earlier, reducing redundancy, improving efficiency, reducing cost, and really improving safety for everybody involved and being able to deliver a better service.
Well, in your last sentence there, those that choose not to participate in shared services shall not reap the benefits of shared services. I'm not talking about any fire department in any location, but there may be occasions in a smaller fire department that you do not have someone in that department that has the ability to do the SOGs so is there other ways they can take part in this system without actually having a bigger part of it?
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
And I would put it on the chief's shoulders to be able to work through this. The intent of that is that if somebody's just sitting back and not doing anything, not even coming to meetings,
Oh,
talking,
okay.
and all of a sudden something comes out, oh, that's good, I like that, that's gonna benefit us, I wanna jump in.
Yeah.
Well, just being part of the meetings and discussions is having an active role in it. It's when somebody doesn't even want anything to do with you, but they're gonna say, oh, that's a good idea, I'm gonna take that. Nothing's gonna stop them from taking this enabling bylaw because it's a public document, but it's just to really put people on notice, if you will, that we're working collectively on this, and if you don't want to work collectively on it, then there's gonna be pushback, I guess. I don't know how else to say it.
okay.
Okay, limited service in there, that's basically word for word, which is in our current enabling bylaw, and it's interesting that you know, a bunch of the wording in all the enabling bylaws that we looked at, because we pulled everybody's enabling bylaw, the wording is almost identical. So I don't know if there was a book written on
Liability?
lawyers on putting wording in enabling bylaws, but it was just like, and they were from the 70s all the way up to the 2020s. So it's very consistent wording on many of the things, and limiting services is one of them. So basically, that's just saying that, you know, we can't guarantee that we're gonna do what's outlined in this for a bunch of different reasons. You know, if there's 10 feet of snow and we can't get the trucks out, that we don't have control over that. 10 basically just gives us the no liability. The 11 talks about mutual aid and going outside of the municipalities. That is almost word for word out of our current. That meets the mutual aid requirements. We have to have authorization from council to be part of mutual aid. So that's why that wording's in there.
John? Excuse me.
Yes.
Going back to 9, fire protection services shall be provided to water access only properties by the fire department at any time the weather permits in accordance with the approved policies approved by council. Is that for, like, I didn't think Oliver Papoonge was doing water access, or fire access.
So
or-
right now, I don't think we have any water access.
Mm.
That was wording that was in this bylaw and I didn't take it out. But as far as I know, we don't have any water access only properties.
There are a few islands that are privately owned in the river. But anyways, just wondered if it's something that would pertain more to, say, Shunya, because they have so many properties with, that are on waterfronts, and then they
Yes,
too have islands as well.
Shunya's got a whole bunch of them. Nebing's got a bunch of
Yes.
water access only properties.
Mhm.
So again, that was just taken out of the old bylaw. And
Okay.
I think it's one of those cover your butt kind of statements that
Yeah, we wouldn't, at this time, we don't have the equipment to do water access. You need to have a boat, you need to have all these things to get into the water, to get to the island, so, yes.
Might be a time to talk about something that I think's got something to do with limited service, and it's kind of a difficult topic to put your head around it with this, is that response time matter about, you and I were talking about that the other day, how many units you get to the scene and so much time and that type of thing?
Yeah, so the enabling bylaw, so it's gonna be response protocols that will be in SOGs, not necessarily part of an enabling bylaw. But what should be in our enabling bylaw that's currently not is objectives or time objectives. So, council approved to say that on average, we want the fire department to respond within 14 minutes. And that's our goal. And that's not in the enabling bylaw. It's not in this one that I've written, partly because of the feasibility study. And we have to do a lot of thinking with respect to what are we going to set our level of service on and then, or response times, and can we meet those? Is it a realistic number? So yeah, there should be in here that, with respect to response, that we are shooting for 14 minutes to have a unit on scene. And it could be higher, it could be lower, but that's our objective. I don't know if that's what you were getting at.
Councillor Viss?
Do you really think that's? There? Yeah, we got all the volunteers, are we something to a broader statement saying we'll do our utmost to get to the scene at the quickest or whatever wording you want to use there, rather than saying within 14 minutes we would try and be there?
So you're right, and it would have to be worded so you're not locked down to that time, but
Right.
putting a time in there puts a benchmark to know whether we're meeting the objective or not. So if we just say as quick as we can, then if we, 1 year we're down to 10 minutes and the next year we're up to 20 minutes, we don't have a benchmark to go for, and then we can't be measured against something. So I agree. We don't say we will be there in 15 minutes. It will be, our objective is to, on average, respond within this time frame.
Mhm.
Maybe it's 14 to 16. I don't know. That's why it's not in here. And then it tells everybody that that's our goal to get to, and there's wiggle room inside of the wording that you're not nailed down to that time.
I guess too, if you start to see it getting worse and worse, and it's time to look at your department and see, is there something we're missing here? Are we losing volunteers? Is there a reason that time is?
Weather
getting-
change, types of
Yeah, equipment. Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't want to put the chief on the spot or myself, but something that we were thinking about, how do you put those things together? And we did talk about when we were gonna have this thing finalized, we need to get our lawyer to look at it to make sure it's what we want. And maybe we need some kind of provision that this is our objective, we're gonna be there in 15 minutes, but there's no guarantees. It's in the proper kind of lingo to keep ourselves safe with this limited service concept.
I guess maybe that's my point, trying to get at, with a volunteer fire department. You don't know who's gonna be available. They could be on vacation, they could be doing all different things. You can easily put a number down there if you have a paid fire department, because you have X number of firemen at the fire station 24 hours a day. So you know about approximately how long it takes. So it's very simple to put that, our goal is 14. But on a volunteer, I don't know how you're gonna get anywhere near that. There's no guarantee that there's gonna be firemen available. So how can you get anywhere near saying even 15, 20 or whichever? It's availability of a volunteer.
So I spoke about NFPA and standards. There are standards in place that volunteer fire departments and all levels of service fire departments should achieve with respect to levels of service. And they're guidelines. It's not saying you will do this, but they're objectives to meet so that we can look at and say, are we within what our council has decided, and it's acceptable to the ratepayers, if you will, to meet that objective. And if we're not meeting it, then we have to look at why aren't we meeting it? Is it because volunteers aren't getting there? Is it because of weather? Is it whatever the case may be? But if we don't have a benchmark to shoot for, then we're just bobbing in the water with respect to our responses. And in my annual report now, I do put in our average response times, including shoot time, which is to get to the station, travel time, all these different things. And if we don't have a benchmark to put that against, those can start creeping up. And you don't realize it, that all of a sudden now it's 20-minute response time. And well, that's okay, because last year it was 19, and year before was 19, and then it was 18. But if you look back 20 years, we were at 10 minutes. So that's the point of the response times, is to give some direction to make sure that we're meeting those objectives as best as we can.
But if I just may, let's come to which reality. The director of operation has all his employees scheduled holidays and vacation away for the year. Do you have that from each volunteer fireman that's going to be available?
At this point, no.
And will you
But-
have that?
It's something that we are looking at and talking about amongst the officers group, because there's days that everybody disappears and we don't even know what we have. So we are looking at, and I don't know how to do it. This is kind of right off the cuff, but looking at some sort of schedule for response to know who's in the municipality, who's not, so that we can make an effective response.
Well, my point is, okay, let's really put to think about how this works. In Morello, you have 5 or 6 firemen that are going to be away. Are you going to assign firemen from wherever, Kakabaka, Etola, or so that they on standby from Morello? You see, you got 6 fire halls. You got a big can of worms. I don't know how you're going to get to time limit, because
So I don't know either, Counselor Viss, honestly, but it's another one of those fish that we
Yeah.
gotta put on the table and deal with. The, that's part of the shared services. That's part of we need help from people. We're no different. There's days when we're hurting for people, and
yeah.
I don't know what it looks like. Honestly don't know. There's been some light discussion amongst the officers group
Okay.
to start thinking about how are we gonna deal with this.
Hmm.
I don't have the answers to that, but if you look at other volunteer departments, like a Terrace Bay or a Marathon and these places, they have schedules. And you are on call at a certain time frame, and you are expected to respond to the station if you're on that platoon that's on shift. And you race to the station, and everybody else is still under the volunteer model. You go if you can, but if you're on the duty shift in platoon A, then you're expected to respond. When you go down to Southern Ontario, they've got volunteers, and they're still called volunteers, although they're more in that paid per call situation, where they're at the station. They're volunteers, they're not full-time employees, but they actually stay at the stations. Is that what we're looking at here? No, we're not, but it's not off the table. But it's another one of those things that with the change in our environment, we have to start looking at what we're doing.
Well, if I just may, it's not my intent to rain on your parade. You get me wrong. I'm just trying to help so we all understand that we're trying to do the best for our fire department and firemen and fire persons, I should say. When you bring up Sarah's Bay or Scriber, very simple. Most of them work at the mill. So within 3-4 minutes from the mill to the fire hall, we don't have that. Scriber has, for instance, the railroad, majority of it in the work, and they're there. How do you measure hours? We're all over the whole municipality and most of them work in the city. So how do you measure compared to when you take a one industry's municipality? Can't.
So I'm not trying to measure us against a Marathon, but I recognize, and it's no secret that we got a different animal here
Yeah.
with respect, and I don't have the answers to that. But it's on the radar, and again, this is a foundation to start working towards that. I
Okay.
mean, there really is so many fish swimming around in the barrel that we have to deal with.
Okay.
That it's just one step at a time, really.
Okay.
That's where we're at. So I don't have the answers to a lot of those your
I
questions,
understand
but
that.
they're on the radar.
Councillor Peacock.
Thank you. Do you find that it may be beneficial to have better communication with CAC? So you get a call, say it's first response call, for instance, and there is a lead time as far as the call comes in and then it goes to CAC and then they page the fire department out. But I think that oftentimes by the time, our crew gets, say, middle of the night, got to sweep your car off, get to the fire hall, get the rescue, get to the scene, by then the ambulance has been and gone and taken the person to the hospital. Do we need better communications with CAC to say ambulance is already on scene, or, you know, just so that our department members know that they get a hustle on and get there, or not?
So, with all due respect, I don't want to go down the CAC road. But there's a whole bunch of issues with respect to CAC. We need to remember that CAC's priority is ambulance dispatch. And they are, reciprocating and paging the fire department out. So there's a whole other animal with respect to CAC and sending out information for us to get paged. So yes, there is communications part of it, but the yeah, well, again, I don't want to say, because it is an open meeting, things that are going to get us into trouble, but it is an issue with respect to the dispatching. And it really boils down to priorities. Their priority is ambulance. So if they have a page out for a fire call and then they get 4 medical page outs, their priority, and they're mandated to page out ambulance care. So that's where the issue starts coming in. And it's something, another thing like the scheduling, it's something we have to look at to get a solution to the paging out of emergency services. I don't know what that is yet, but it's another one that's on the radar.
Okay, we continue on.
Okay, so chief responsibilities and authority. This one is expanded a lot in terms of what is my responsibility and my authorization, but really I don't think there's anything in here that should be alarming. It's basically what I do in terms of, or any chief does in terms of their role.
I just had one question on J. It talks about approval of automatic aid, mutual aid. What is automatic aid? I just want a good
So automatic
clarification.
aid would be an agreement where, I'll use CONME as an example. We
Mhm.
enter into an automatic aid agreement. If there's a page in CONME, we are automatically paged and respond.
Okay, all right.
Opposed to mutual aid is a request.
Mhm.
So an automatic aid agreement is
Okay,
they get paged, we get paged at the exact same time, and we respond.
and that is happening now. You're
Not
not.
for us. We don't have, there's 3 automatic aids that the fire department currently has. Although we've never been able to find them, and they're with the city of Thunder Bay, and I've had 2 chiefs looking. But one of them is to Superior or Sergeant Propane. There's an automatic aid agreement to that.
Okay,
There's one to the tree nursery on 25th Side Road, and there's one to the Bell Building by the church on 130. The
okay.
telephone exchange.
Hmm.
Those, I've been told they're there. Nobody's been able to find them. So if there's a page out to the tree farm, the city goes automatically. And I've talked to the chiefs about that to try and figure out what that is, why it's there, and then how do we deal with it. We've never been able to do it.
Okay.
So there is an automatic aid that I know of between Shunya and Pass Lake. So they both respond to each of their calls, and it's in an agreement. But that's what automatic aid is.
Great, thank you. Wait,
I just have a question about that. So an automatic aid agreement, it may be one where it's the reciprocal, like each service does have that capacity. Or it could be automatic and the service that's going to be coming has something the other force doesn't have.
So it could be whatever the council wants, it's agreeable between the two. So if we did an automatic aid with CONME, there might be money exchanging that says you pay this much for the year and then this much per call. Maybe you pay this much for the year. It might be that we're not going to charge you money, but you need to do this, this, and this. It's really up to the 2 parties in terms of what the agreement is and what the exchange is. So there is some sort of exchange, but it doesn't have to be cash. It could be other things. So they're really open. It's up to whatever the 2 parties want to do.
Okay.
Typically, it's money though.
At a tree farm there, well, the fire department will be
So it automatically goes to, through the 911 and both the city and us get dispatched to it. So a lot of times now the city, because they didn't really, the trucks didn't really realize that there was an automatic aid. So we'd show up sometimes before them, sometimes after them, and it's like, well, what are you guys doing here? Well, this is actually in Oliver Papoonge. So, so yeah, that's, and the same with Sergeant, that got discovered because they, one of the officers was doing homework for a certification course and he picked that location. So he called to say, we got to come in and do a plan. It's like, well, this is actually in Oliver Papoonge and the plan is through the fire chief there. So that's what sparked that whole
Mhm.
thing. So,
Which makes sense. All those three locations make sense.
Yeah.
Because they are on our border.
and there is no reciprocation that I know. We don't pay them anything. And they don't charge us when they go. And so that's why we're trying to find the agreement to see what it actually says.
Careful what you ask for.
Yes,
If you find payment, just kind of lose that piece of paper.
yeah.
Whoops, we're in a public meeting. Shouldn't have said that. Okay. Hours.
Okay, powers, that's basically word for word out of the old. And it talks about, cost recovery again in there. Needs to do a little bit of work on that. You know, the next 2 or 3 sections talks about fees, bylaws and that kind of stuff. And we've got several different bylaws with respect to fees that the fire department can charge. So those all have to get cleaned up into a consistent bylaw.
It mentions here that if the fire chief has to delegate work to someone, it should be done verbally or may be done verbally or written. Is it done in writing somewhere so that if anyone questions it in a case?
So typically it's in writing, the verbal part's in there in case we're on the scene and I tell you to do something. Then you can do it verbally and we don't take time to write it all out. But typically, like I said, the authority for the investigations, we've got an authority and I think it's a resolution actually that says I hereby give authority under this act to have this individual be able to do this. So,
Okay,
and I'm trying to go more and more with that to have these things written out in a document that's signed and on file.
right, okay,
Okay, the employment, a big part of this is in the Schedule D, so we'll talk about it. One change that is in there is in our current bylaw, it talks about all firefighters getting appointed through council. That's never been done, to my knowledge, on the fire department. It's always been the chief and deputy chief are appointed, and the other members are basically brought on through the fire chief and deputy chief. So I kind of left it in that way, and I'm playing with the idea that there's an annual report to cover off the appointment of people as firefighters. The issue is that we've got high turnover with people coming and going, and it would turn into a nightmare in terms of I'd be putting reports in every council meeting about this I want them appointed, and then 2 months later we're taking them off because they've moved and things like that. So. And then I think the rest of the stuff is standard stuff in there, obstructions, offenses, that kind of stuff, repealing. Something in there that the CEO clerk can do minor amendments without
yes,
that kind of stuff, so.
spelling errors and things like that.
So that's the meat of the enabling bylaw. Getting into the schedules, so Schedule A, this is the org chart that we have to do some work on it, and I'm hoping to get something to put into there once the feasibility comes with some direction. But I do plan on not having such a straight line. You know, span of control is 3 to 7 units, with 5 being the optimal. And if you look at it right now, technically the deputy chief is way over that span of control because everybody goes through the deputy up to me. And then I'm up to Wayne. So we've got to level that out. And the feasibility study will potentially change that structure. So that's gonna come. This is one where it's gonna be different for the structure for every municipality, which is fine. Okay, Schedule B, this is where things really, I don't want to say change, but they get much more detailed than what's in our current enabling bylaw. So basically, we've put in any kind of a response that the fire department currently does or can potentially do, and given some direction with respect to whether we do that response and to what level. One of the drivers to this, like I said earlier, is the certification of firefighters. So if we don't have clear direction to do extrication, for example, then if it just says we're gonna perform it, we can do extrication to one level under firefighter 2. We can do operations extrication, that's a vehicle on its side, or technical extrication, which is on its roof. Or if there's somebody goes through a windshield, there's a technical part of that, then you have to be technically certified. So we have to define our services much more to be able to meet that training certificate level. So that's what we did with this, and this was the big reason why the St. Clair document, because they had it all laid out basically in this format. So it's broken down into response sections, if you will. It is really basically the same level of service that we're currently doing. So it's not like we're doing a whole bunch of new stuff, we're just breaking it down. The only exception that's a little bit different comes with hazmat operations. In our current enabling bylaw, hazmat says awareness only. Awareness level training is only to recognize. So hazmat, it recognize that it's a hazmat. If it's water rescue, recognize that it's water rescue and that you're not trained to do anything, and then you call in for support. With respect to hazmat, the issue is that if we have a motor vehicle collision and a diesel tank on a truck is leaking, that's technically operations level. So if we put a pond under that to catch the diesel, that's operations. And we currently do that. So we are outside of our enabling bylaw currently. We've been doing it since probably before this enabling bylaw came into effect. So I did put in here hazmat operations as a level of service. The whole hazmat certification has changed somewhat. So when we say hazmat operations, basically it's allowing us, and that's why it says core in that level, it's letting us deal with gasoline, diesel, propane, kind of the standard ones, and to do things like put a pond underneath to catch a leak. It is not training us to go into whatever chemical that melts your skin off in 2 seconds. That's technical level, and that's where we call in for help. Okay, but everything, like even though this is a lot more detail, it's basically what we're doing right now. And the way it breaks down is that under emergency response, we got basic firefighting. Wayne brought it up already. So that's basically saying that we're going to respond to firefighting operations. And it says in there, fires, alarms, pre-fire conditions, suppression, and we're going to do our best to conform to the most current standards that are out there. Then we break down into each of the functions under the firefighting. So we've got structural firefighting is one of them, and it references an NFPA document that was in our master plan, suggesting that we start referencing what the standards are. And then we've got interior search and rescue, interior fire suppression, exterior fire suppression, industrial response. And then it breaks down into vehicle fires, wildfires, all those kinds of different functions that we do. Now, what's really important about this is that just because it's referenced in here doesn't mean that we're going to run into a burning building. Okay, what it says is that with some conditions, we are authorized to do this. And this is really key to us all having the same enabling bylaw and all being trained to be able to do that function. So that if I get 3 people from O'Connor that happen to be driving through and we get a call, they can actually respond because their enabling bylaw allows it. Our enabling bylaw allows it, and we know that they're trained to the level to safely be able to do that function. So that's really a key point to this whole enabling bylaw. So for interior search and rescue, for example, provided to search and rescue endangered, trapped, or potentially trapped persons within a structure. So that's, you know, to Councillor Vis's point, we hear somebody screaming. If we have a scene assessment that's done for the reasonable justification for the risk. So for example, if we have fire shooting out all the windows and somebody's screaming inside of there, unfortunately, that's not a survivable event. A risk assessment would tell us that we don't go in for that, okay? Structure integrity and hazard conditions. So if it looks like the building's gonna collapse, the IC or the senior person on scene, which our SOGs go to the, IC goes to the most senior person, they're gonna make that determination as to whether they can, the building's safe to go in. This is key because after a fire, doing overhaul or investigation, we have to make sure that the building is safe for us to go in. Sufficient trained people on site, reliable water source on site, and adequate fire ground supervision. So if we've got 4 brand new firefighters without a certified fire officer on site to do a high risk operation like this, there's not enough properly trained supervision on it. So this is directing us that we don't do that. Okay. And then limited services if we can't provide or we can't meet those objectives on the top. And really those are the same objectives basically for each one of the services we're going to provide. So you got interior search and rescue, you got interior fire suppression, exterior, same thing, a little bit less stringent, you know, but it's basically the same. Industrial response, because we got so much in industry, we have to kind of have its own little thing in there. Rural firefighting, that gets into more of the water supply part of it, but it is something that we have to recognize that we have rural settings with respect to water supply. Vehicle fires, this is one that the world is changing on with the electric vehicles out there, the EVs. Firefighting is for these particular units is turning into very specialized and hazardous. So we've put some wording in to deal with that. Brush fires, one of the key things on this, and this, you know, my background is in brush fires. Number 2, having aerial support in the sky. If the fire's so big that you can't see the whole thing, then we're backing off until we get somebody up in the sky to tell us what's going on. Now, that could be a drone. We do have a drone, that could be that. So that has to be deployed. Or it's calling the MNR in for aerial support with the helicopter. Okay. Automatic aid in accordance with agreements, defined service agreements, that's that shared service, again, as per agreements, mutual aid, medical first response. This one, you see it's blank in there. You guys are aware that our medical response is what's drowning the fire department because of the call volume. So it's putting in there that we're gonna have a response agreement with the ambulance service that's gonna define what we're responding to. I am working on that based on last year's calls and the color coding through that MPDS system. And that's what's gonna drive this, is where we're going in terms of response protocols. I need you guys to tell me which calls we're gonna go to and which ones we're not gonna go to. And, you know, circling back to the response times, if we know our response time on average is 14 minutes, and to Councillor Peacock's point, where there's a delay, we're not getting it for 5 minutes, and on our average drive time for anywhere is 10 minutes. Well, if there's gonna be an ambulance there in 15 minutes, don't page us. You're gonna beat us there. So all you're doing is waking everybody up and there's no response. And we've got data now through the good work of Rachel and tracking all this and my firefighters tracking it on reports, that we can start seeing how many times is the ambulance there before us? How many times are we getting to a scene where we can actually affect some sort of change? You know, if it's a low priority slip and fall, for example, that's not a medical issue, they need help getting somebody picked up, that's a green call for the ambulance. That's a 30-minute dispatch. You know, why are we going? Unless it's a fire department where there's an individual that's large that they need some arms to pick up. So there's a lot of work that has to come in this medical first response one. In the meantime, it's going to be status quo. but there has to be some changes in that. Okay, and then all the rest of ones are really, are just in there to say that we are gonna help the police, we are gonna help the ambulance. That is lift assist, that's a fire department call, not a medical call. Vehicle collisions starts changing, because of the certification for, extrication. They currently have a passenger vehicle extrication, and we see enough calls that we really need to be technically certified to do, extrications. And there is heavy extrication, so that's big transport trucks. We've had many calls with large transport trucks, so once that course is out, we're really gonna have to be certified to that. And then it goes into farm equipment and all kinds of other technical rescue that I don't know where it's gonna go down the road. One of the drivers on this whole shared services and outlining this is the extrication component. You have to be equipped and you have to be trained to be able to provide extrication. And I don't know how smaller departments are gonna be able to do it. I've been pushing, the province that this needs to turn into almost a, like right now, hazmat technical or USAR, which is urban search and rescue. They're provincial assets. The departments get funding and they're expected to respond to the province. The city of Thunder Bay is one of them. And you don't pay for that. For extrication, there's all kinds of different levels of service as you go across the province of Ontario. Highway 588 is a provincial highway. And you start getting into some very small fire departments. I don't know how they're gonna be able to certify the technical or heavy equipment extrication and be able to fund the equipment that's needed to do that. We can't all do that. This is another good example of sharing services. Say, okay, look, we're gonna do the technical rescue. We're gonna outfit properly. We're gonna do all that. We're not even touch water rescue because to be able to do that effectively, it's the same as extrication. All kinds of equipment, all kinds of training. Okay, Shunya, you guys do more water. You guys be the water. And if we need water, we're gonna call you. You're gonna come and help us. So that's kind of the trading off in terms of sharing services. Okay. So yeah, weather, technical service. So if we get into hazmat, it says we're gonna do the operations core level. Again, that's the gasoline, that's the small minor stuff. And it also gives us training to help a technical situation, is very involved with decontamination and all that. And for a fire department that doesn't have that training and background, it's really overwhelming. So that's kind of a change in there in terms of the current enabling bylaw. And then when you get into hazard materials technical level, you can see shall not be provided by the fire department, only to the awareness level. And it's going to be dealt with through an automatic or some sort of aid agreement. So when we get into water rescue, urban search and rescue, rope rescue, confined space, trench, mine rescue, and this is one that caught me. It's like, we don't have caves and mines. Well, actually, there's quite a few of them around. There's like 5,000 documented open mines in Ontario spread out all over the province. So we could run into it. We've never done it, but you know, so we're only doing awareness. So
Can I go back just to number 9, highway incident services? And I want to come back again to reference what I said about when we went outside of 2 municipalities to fight those fires. Do we have a plan in place how many vehicles went there?
So at the initial response, we had, I can't tell you exactly how many, but a significant number of vehicles. And the reason was, that was my call. The page came out with multi-vehicle fires, people trapped, and no response from anybody else. So I'll say authorized enough firepower to be able to deal with that. Once we had units on scene and we knew what we were dealing with, those units were released very quickly so that we only had what we needed on there. The other thing that happened is that I immediately called the zone coordinator, got him out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. So, and said, we're responding to this. I'm responding with a lot of firepower. I gave him the situation and said, if I have a page, I need help immediately. So that if we did have a page out in our municipality, he would have immediately called probably the city of Thunder Bay to respond.
Okay, I guess that was my question, where we're gonna go with that, because if you have, that was good that you probably did, because whatever, I don't think you saved any life, but that's beside the point. The thing is, did we have firemen in each one of our stations just in case we had a call within the municipality? Did you?
We didn't have firefighters in each station at that
Should we
time.
not have in a plan something to that, just one or two, so if the city came out, they would know where Sims Lane is?
So,
And so if we had one in each fire, or one or two firemen there, well, then they could take them. It's just something to look at. If maybe you don't need it, but I think it's a good plan to have in place for protection of our own when we're outside of it.
so that incident triggered a lot of things, and there's been a couple other incidents along the same line where I know I went all the way to the district coordinator at one point. There was an evening where there was several fires, none in our municipality, thank God, but the surroundings, basically all the fire departments were tied up helping 3 different municipalities. 2 of them had multiple calls going on at the same time. And so we are getting much better at controlling what's responding out of our municipality and having people stand by. So we're tightening that up. And part of the zone with the mutual aid is trying to get it online with what it's supposed to do. Like technically in mutual aid, the zone coordinators and the district coordinators are supposed to evaluate and backfill. So that if we have all of our units go to a major incident somewhere, that they'll actually move vehicles from other municipalities in. That's the way technically it's supposed to work. A lot of work has to get done to get us to there, but it is on the radar. And it is certainly on my consideration when we respond. I get on the radio right away and say, what are we going to? On the one that we went to on the Finnmark area, I called CAC and I said, what's going on? And they gave me the down low. A lot of that you can't say over the public radio stuff.
Mhm.
So they gave the down low and it was dire. And, you know, in my judgment, there was a significant risk to the public in whole, which is part of the mandate for the fire service. But once we got there and realized what was actually happening, we started turning units back immediately to get back to the municipality to deal with this, with might happen here. And I called Blair, the zone coordinator, like I was 5 minutes out of my house driving, saying, I need help. I can't do a response right now because we're going to this. And there was a discussion, like, why so many trucks? Well, this is what we're dealing with, I think. Don't know, we're not there. And yeah, so that's where
Yeah, and that's just my point, though. It's for safety of our own people, if you had one or two, even one at each fire station in case something, and somebody come in from the city, at least you could direct them where to go. It's just something maybe we need to look at, just for safety sake of our own, to cover our own area.
Sean? Is there communication between the fire chiefs that, because the requirements of training are getting to a level where you're getting burnout from your volunteers, and if the department, an area department, doesn't have enough volunteers to cover an incident of any kind, whether it be medical or with the number of highways that all of our municipalities have running through them, is there anywhere where the fire chiefs can, you know, talk to each other, neighboring municipality, and say, look, you know, we're down to 2 or 3 volunteers. Is there a chance you can be on standby should something happen?
So that is really the intent of the shared services, and there is discussion happening with chiefs. It's not matured enough to get to that, to say, hey, I've only got 2 people, I'm gonna need help. Again, we can't do that right now without consistent enabling bylaws and consistent training. But really, that is the heart of this shared services project, is to get us communicating. You know, the fire service for so many years has been silos. You know, many years ago, I tried to, you know, in my other world, I sell fire equipment. I tried to get all the municipalities on the same page to group purchase fire hose, for example. You know, if each of us buy 10 lengths, you're going to pay a premium. But if we all need 10 lengths and order 100, you're going to get price breaks. But what happened was, well, we use blue hose, we use yellow hose, we buy from this person. So the time wasn't right on that. I think right now the time is right. A lot of new chiefs in the system. And, the pressures that are getting put on by certification, by just what's going on with getting challenged in terms of responses and all that, the time's right that we have to start talking with people. Volunteerism is dying. It's just not, and it's not the fire departments. Any volunteer organization is struggling to do things. And I keep telling the other chiefs when we talk, the only way any of us are going to be able to survive this is if we start turning into a collective. O'Connor, 600 residents. How are you going to have a functioning fire department out of 600 residents? It's just, it's no different than us. We got more people, but we're facing the same struggles. So to your question, that is the intent of this, and it's something that's going to happen. I talk with Blair, I won't say daily, but for sure weekly. We go for lunch quite often just to talk about this stuff and how we're going to start dealing with it. And the other chiefs are starting to recognize that we have to change what we're doing, all of us. And those discussions are going to start happening. To the very front part, if you're not going to be part of the discussions and you're just going to jump on, then it's not that simple to just come in and say, hey, you're going to give us people to help, then I'll get on with that. Well, you don't have an enabling bylaw that allows you to do it. So what do you want me to say to you? Okay, I think that's it. It gets into things like training and emergency planning and all that kind of stuff. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It does list the certification training that we're putting in place. So, but basically, if you go to Schedule C, that's really where the meat of this is. And basically what we've done is we've broken down the services and said that if we're going to provide this service, this is what we have to have for a level of training. So for structural firefighting, we need to have a certified pumper operator. Support role, there's the level of training that you have to have. Interior firefighter, so if you're doing interior attack, inside the structure or in the hot zone, you've got to be certified to level 1 and 2. Exterior, you only have to be certified to level 1, right? And incident command, you have to be certified to level 1 and 2 firefighting. You have to be fire officer certified, and you have to be incident safety officer certified. Okay. Incident safety officer, you have to be all of those same things as the IC. Important to note that the incident safety officer is the incident command is the incident safety officer, but we should be designating a specific person for that role at a major incident. So that's why those two are interchangeable. As a note, if we're doing technical things like technical extrication, we have an incident ISO and we have a technical ISO. That technical ISO focuses on the safety of the technical extrication. That's part of the changes with certification on it. Okay, sector officers, and it just keeps listing by the main function of the level of service what you need to have for training. So this sets the level so that there's no discussion. If CONME buys into this and they approve it, they know that they're going to potentially provide interior attack. They're going to say we can't do it. We don't have enough people right now. But if we do get enough people from surrounding departments, they're able to do that. But their people have to be certified to this level. Okay, grass, brush fires, it just goes through all of them in there. Yeah.
I think have the fire chiefs talked to their councils about all this training that they're going to need to do?
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
Part of the shared service discussion when the chief started meeting was, and even at the February meeting we had a couple years ago with the councils around the table, there was a big push from a number of us chiefs that have been around for a little bit. I mean, I'm not that old as a chief, but you need to be talking to your councils and you need to be putting it in writing through reports and talking to them about certification, about all these various things that are going on. This enabling bylaw was the last meeting we had. We agreed on the stuff in here. The intent was for them to bring it to their councils to do this very thing, talk to them and say, this is what we're working on, and then go from there. Are they actually doing it? I honestly can't answer that. I certainly hope they are.
Councillor Peacock?
Thank you. Getting back to page 17, with regard to fire prevention and public education, the duties that are listed there, like number 5, conducting licensing inspections, and number 8, enforcing municipal bylaws, like vulnerable occupancy inspections. That seems to be a lot of duties. And does it kind of conflict with the building inspector
No.
or no?
So it's a lot of duties. Our current prevention program, and we've kind of called things incorrectly. Fire prevention includes education, inspection, enforcement, and investigation. Though that's what fire prevention is. So I lost my train of thought. When we get into vulnerable sectors, for example, there is legal requirements for us to do for vulnerable sector buildings. We have to do an inspection on it. It has to get reported on. We do have one vulnerable sector building in our municipality right now. So there's a lot of duties in there. Our current layout is not in line with this. That's part of the changes that have to start happening. You have to be, like, under certification to do fire inspections, you have to be a fire inspector level 1 certified. If you're dealing with flammable gases, which we do, you have to be level 2 certified. So part of this whole thing is that we have to look at what we're currently doing to start meeting up to this objective.
At what point do you get a provincial inspector to come in?
Only for fire investigation.
Okay,
And we do have technical support through the province. But fire investigation, we're mandated for certain conditions, fire death, a certain value, an explosion, anything to do with a meth lab, then we are required to contact the OFM and they send in an investigator to be able to do that investigation so they can stand up in court. And if there's a fatality, then obviously it's pretty intense. Okay, so I think that's it for C. Is there any questions on that? This is gonna be another one that's gonna grow as certain certifications and things start coming out, but it's a starting point for us. Schedule D, this is conditions of employment. This is really expanded in our thing. And this is one where I think we still have to do some work and some discussion on. But basically, we're talking about the Employment Standard Act, and that's not intended to start pushing us towards hiring firefighters, but really volunteer firefighters are employees with respect to the Employment Standard Act and with, occupational health and safety and things like that. So to be eligible 18, we are requiring that everybody have a DZ license. We're getting a lot of people apply with not that license, and it really doesn't help us when our trucks are all DZ. So it's going to be a requirement. Subject to driver's abstract, so that's going to be our policy. We put a timeline within 2 years, you've got to get your DZ license. The DZ? Oh, absolutely. You can do it in a month. Yeah. So you've got to write a test. You got to do some driver training with our people and then go and pass a test. Another path I won't go down. So yes, it is attainable. Absolutely.
Just, hey. For the DZ license. Stuff to get it started basically was so fast.
well, there is problems here because they have only one location where you can get your license, and many people that are working for a living, driving a big truck will have to come back 3-4 times before they finally get in to get the license. That's silly.
On the, then, like the fire firefighter term period of unemployment. Should it not also be the employment volunteer fire department and first aid response personnel?
So it could, but this turns into the definitions.
Well,
Where
no,
the-
because then you would take that license off, because if you're just first aid, you only gonna.
That's right. And this is one where I think maybe we have to do some clarifications on it, but I didn't want it to get too, like when we were talking amongst the chiefs, get it too detailed, because there are so many variations, and like Shunya, they don't have a first response team in the sense that all their people are cross-trained. So all the first responders are firefighters. And there's, we have firefighters, first responders, and cross-trained people. And many of the other departments have the same. So it's, yeah, I mean, those kinds of things could be added in here, but okay, physically fit, criminal records, we do that currently as part of a recruitment. You have to do a background check. Reside in the municipality or very close to it. We're actually, as an officer group, pretty tight on this. If you're in the middle of the city, we basically say no. We don't want people racing through the city coming to get to a call. Written oral testing, really that's about certification, but some of the departments do have some sort of competency test that they put in their system. Certification as per the Schedule A and B. Acceptable number of emergency call outs. So it says minimum call out is 60%. This was a lot of debate in our chiefs discussions on it. We need to do evaluation on this. For some departments, that's certainly attainable. For us, a straight firefighter will not meet 60% of the call volume, because like 70% of the call volume is medical calls.
Do a good job at fire prevention.
That's right. So this is one, we have to do some evaluation, whether we put a minimum response on there in terms of volume or what. I think there has to be something in there. We do from time to time get people that are joining to get experience and resume padding, and they come get the training, they come get the just the training really, and get enough of that to be able to jump ship and get out.
Mhm.
A stepping stone. And so, yeah, we have to have the expectation is that if you can respond, you must respond. Understanding that if you're at work or kids, all that kind of stuff. But what we don't want is all of us out for 20 hours dealing with a house fire minus 20 and Billy Bob sitting there watching the football game. So training, with respect to training section, it is currently 60%, and we're starting to really try and track that and have discussions. Attend acceptable number of station duties. We put that at 80%. Our station duty used to be a set night. Now it's really floating because people are all over the place. But really our truck checks and maintenance equipment is critical, and it's something that happens rotating every month. So there's no reason why people can't say, okay, I can't come tonight, but I'll come tomorrow night and do this truck. So that's why it's higher at 80%. And then the rest of them, I don't know if I didn't really highlight anything that's critical. We did put 12 months for a probationary period. That's in our current enabling bylaw. And at my discretion as the fire chief to go beyond the 12 months for probation for whatever reason, somebody gets sick in the first year or something that, workplace insurance, general duties, it's all kind of standard stuff. I don't know if there's anything else to say with respect to those.
At the end of the year, when the report is done, is that when you have a look and see, okay, who is actually showing up and who's completed and who's ready to move forward? Or does that happen regularly at a captain's meeting? And
Happens on officers meetings, and it's really Rachel, as part of the training officer recruitment role, will monitor the stuff that you have to do as a recruit, and there's a whole bunch of things that they have to do beforehand, and then it's up to the station officer, station captain to bring their name forward. So have they come to the station duties? The training stuff, again, all comes through the training officer. And then just the character and are they engaged and are they ready to move forward? I'm very conscious of the fact, when I started, 30+ years ago, I had my DZ license, so you can drive the truck, right? Yep. And can remember to this day, one of the first responses I ever did, I didn't know anybody else was coming and my knees were knocking so hard that driving a split shift gas engine fire truck was a challenge. And, I don't think it's fair to firefighters to put them into that position or medical for that matter. So the officers that are supposed to have, we'll say, day-to-day contact with them have to really say, yeah, they're ready to move, or no, they're not ready to forward. So I'm very conscious of not getting people too far ahead of themselves. And motor vehicle collisions, we have a lot of new people that we will not allow them go to the vehicle till they get some stuff under their belt, if you will.
Okay, Councillor Viss?
Yeah, just a question. I think it's a good meeting. I think we looked at a whole lot of stuff, but what is your plan with this now? Because as the discussion went today, is a whole lot of answers, work in progress. And where do we get to finally, so we approve the bylaw accepting this when we're just saying work in progress? Where does that stop? And where does it start? Like, what are we passing?
So, and my take on that is that this is acceptable. This is where we're going. And we clean up the wording in terms of the highlights. And, if there's a couple things that, like the, medical first response, maybe we add a statement in there to say that this is a work in progress. Then it's got to go to the lawyer to get assessed. And then if there's any big changes from the lawyer, that I would imagine it comes back here. If there's no big changes, then it would come back here as a final to get approved and implemented.
Would you be
The
working-
reason I'm saying, if I just may interrupt, is you alluded also to the new fire department scenario we're looking at, the
Oh, the
new
feasibility study?
feasibility, that's the word I'm looking, feasibility study. So if it alludes to that and it may make changes in here, why would we move ahead with a bylaw that maybe later on this year make number of changes? And they may not, I don't know that, but you alluded there could be changes made depending on that feasibility study. So don't you think we should just wait till we take a look at least at a feasibility study?
So two comments to that. The only thing that the feasibility study is really going to impact is the org chart and potentially like the deputy chiefs or station captains, like that org chart part of it is really the only thing that's going to change. In terms of what the expectations of the fire department are, that's not going to change whether we have one station or 6 stations. This is the service we're going to provide. What may change is some of our response protocols in terms of trucks responding and people responding, assignment for people to stations. That stuff may change, but I don't see any changes in the enabling bylaw in terms of the structure and the services being provided out of that feasibility study.
Well, if I just may, I hate to argue with you all the time, but the point is, you're saying 1 or 6 stations. If we have 1 station, how many firefighters are going to stay on? They say, Turloo, I ain't doing that. So you see, I don't know what the feasibility study is going to say. Does it say 1? Does it say 6? Does it say 5? I don't know what it says. I haven't seen it. But what if it came out to that scenario, whatever, and the fire department and the firefighters don't have any input and say, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to cover that kind of an area because it's going to take too much of my time. Then what do we do? Like this bylaw should come into play with that new feasibility study. No? Am I wrong? I don't know. I think it ties in together.
So if I'll attempt to put my view on that. They all do tie in together. Unfortunately, we'll never have definitive answers on any of the projects going on. The feasibility study is not going to say 1 station. Okay, I just use that as an example. But regardless of and I don't want to sound negative against our responders, but it's really up to council to decide what the level of service is. And if that's a change in the way we're responding, then the fire department has to react to that. And I don't know where it goes. But I think for this kind of a thing, it's got to be a council directed thing. And I really don't think it should be coming from all of the firefighters with respect to each one saying, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Because then we're just going to turn into a mess of never going anywhere and drag the whole thing out. We've got a deadline of July 2026 with respect to certification. We need to have clear direction with respect to that. You know, if the feasibility studies comes out and gives us a 10-year plan, then, you know, at what point does this come into play? Because that feasibility study will never, it's not going to come to fruition for 10 years. So we're always caught, there's going to be changes to this, but this is a starting point to start moving down the road. Understanding that if things have to change, if there's new training levels that come out, if there's a new hazard that comes out of in our municipality that we have to provide different training for a different level, that's always going to be in front of us, and we have to adapt to it as we cross those bridges. But I honestly think that we have to get the enabling bylaw updated from 2010. We have to get the level of service outlined with respect to what we're going to deliver to our ratepayers. And then we have to have the certification training to meet that level. We were in very good shape for certification. Our people, to their credit, have put a lot of effort into getting certified to be able to meet that deadline. So, you know, we're almost there in terms of the certification, but without the clear direction and the authority to do it, I think we're just going to be spinning our wheels.
Just one question for myself is, we've looked at this now and more or less we've gone through it, and you know what little things here or there that you would want to change. How does that work? Are all the other municipalities, the other 3, 4 that are, you know, the other 3, I think, that are involved in working on this, are they doing the same thing now? And then you all, once our lawyers have looked at it, you're all going to get together and get one product that's going to come to each of us, or?
It could get to that state. I think we've gotten this to the point where unless there's a big thing that a lawyer says, hey, that's got to come out, that's going to impact all of us, there's going to be more discussions. I know Blair, he and Shunya were trying to get their enabling bylaw passed before Christmas. You know, I don't think that came to fruition. The other chiefs, I haven't talked to them to where they're at with respect to their councils in this. But there will be, I wanted to wait till this meeting happened to reach out to everybody else to see, because if you guys say this is crazy, we don't want anything to do with it, then I need to communicate that to the group and then figure out what the next step is in terms of working towards it.
Wayne?
I was thinking, if we have an LRMC meeting, we can ask the other parties what they're doing.
The
you
other
know?
councils, heads of council, where they're at. We can certainly do that at the next meeting.
Yeah, and Wayne and I had talked at one point about potentially having another LRMC group meeting with the chiefs and the councils just to say, hey, where are we at with this? And put it out on the table to say, you know, we think this is crazy, or no, we all buy into it. And then it's like, okay, if you buy into it, we got to start moving forward on it.
Yeah, well, there wouldn't be a problem with that. No. Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Peacock.
Thank you. And I was just going to say, if they've got, if every municipality has a different lawyer and everybody has a different take on how they understand, then there could be some conversation held there as well.
Yeah, and I think at the chief level, we can talk about that.
Yeah, I don't think a lawyer is going to, I mean, it's just basically something you go by, a direction you go by. It's not fighting a fight in court or anything. So they're just going to cover any kind of writing in here that might be a liability for us. Yeah. Councillor Campa?
Not looking for any specifics, but just I know that officers groups had opportunity to look at this bylaw too. So what's the feedback been like from them or from the rest of the department?
Quiet.
Councillor Viss?
Yeah, and my questions and my statements I made, it's not because I don't think we should have a direction. I understand that we need to have a direction. But through my mind, a whole lot of stuff goes together with the feasibility study and this. And if this was an in-camera session, I would tell you what's in my mind, but I can't say that because that go all over the world and say well, that's this, you know. And so
Done it again.
but I have real concerns that passing something where something else is going to tie into not knowing that, and I would have really problems signing my name to something like that. But there's nothing about my direction. If you're saying today, pass that in general, we take that as a document, that's fine till you get the picture. I would have no doubt.
Okay. These are really all policies and are moving objects. They change as direction from the province or whatever changes, so it's just
Yeah, and we can have a conversation with your concerns on it to see if I can answer the concerns or whether something in here has to get it changed.
yeah. Councillor Peacock?
Sorry, one other question. Does the OFM have to have a look at this? Or are they involved at all?
It's a municipal council thing.
Okay. I
So when we
appreciate the
get it-
work that's gone into it.
Thank you. When we get into the NFPP departments, then it's a different story because they actually are, their council, if you will, the NFPP department council, if you will, would be the OFM. So they're the ones that set the policy, the way I understand it. Could be wrong.
Okay, so we have one other item that we had, well, two, but the next one in regards to Wildland Fire Management Act. There's a few pages. We did talk or look at this a little bit at our council meeting because that was one of the topics we talked about at the Roma conference with the ministry. And I know that there's things in here that still are, you just shake your head and you don't know how it's gonna work.
That's right.
So,
So, so just some background on this, the province, the Forest Fire Prevention Act, they did an engagement to get input into changing that act. They also did one with the Emergency Management Act, Emergency Management Civil Protection Act. And I went to the emergency engagement for the Emergency Act, and I went to several for the Wildfire Act and voiced a whole bunch of concerns, and we did put in some written comments to it. And this brief was put together to talk about at the at Roma. So I think the key points to this whole thing that concern me as the fire chief is the cost recovery aspect of it. And I've voiced this for many years over the structure of their cost recovery from the province. They're basically they'll come in and help us, and there's an agreement in place, which I have to get to council because ours is up this year, but that outlines rates and all that kind of stuff. And we break into municipal protection areas and crown protection areas. But basically, if it's in a municipal protected area, if we call for help, we pay the bill. And as a reference point, the Surrey Road fire we had several years ago, the aircraft, we called for help. The aircraft involved were in the neighborhood of $200,000 for an afternoon of aircraft. That fire was in crown protection area, so we ended up billing the ministry for our fire trucks were there. Had it been in a municipal, they would have given us a bill. And the problem, there's a couple problems in my opinion, and they're kind of outlined in here, but high level, the province will get their money because they're going to come after us to say pay the bill. Then it's up to us to cost recover from an individual. I don't know how many people around the table have got a couple $100,000 in their pocket to pay a bill like that. So the reality is that the municipality is going to get stuck with it.
Yep. If
we decide to fight for it, there's a couple problems. One, we're going to pay the legal bills to fight for it, and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Nothing against lawyers, but it's going to be a lot of money. and you can't get blood from a stone.
Mm.
So not only are we gonna pay for the suppression costs from the ministry and the costs that we have with respect to the suppression, but then we have to fight to get the money that we have to pay to the province. To me, that's just not right. The other aspect of it is to be able to have an investigation to stand up in court. We don't have that expertise to do that. If it's a structure fire, like I said, a fatality or a high value, the OFM comes in and does the investigation and they actually go to court and fight for it. So I really think the MNR should be in the same position. They should be providing the expertise and then doing the cost recovery on it. My own opinion. If we call the ministry in for investigation, they'll come in and do it, but we'll probably get a bill for that service. So it's just all kind of downloading on the municipalities. And I honestly think that one of these big fires is going to bankrupt a municipality. If you have water bombers on a fire for 2 days, you're into the $1 million. So that's concerning on it. Would they actually do it? I don't know. But the way the new act's reading, they did change it to may
Mhm.
instead of shall, which was the previous one. But I don't know. I just get very nervous at that aspect of it. That kind of leads into the next point about authority and confusion. I really voiced the concern that fire chiefs have got no authority in the Forest Fire Prevention Act, which is now going to be the Wildfire Management Act. And I'm not looking for more authority, but if we have a fire that starts in a municipal protection area, I've got no authority to lay a charge. If they are smoking, that's an offense under the Forest Fire Prevention Act or this new act. But I have to call a CO in to do that. Which has worked. I have called them, but they are limited in the number of people. And if we start going down this path of calling him to do all this stuff, it's going to get prioritized. And I can see problems with that. And then when you get into cost recovery and all that, they're doing the investigation. It's going to stand up in court for us to recover costs, which to me it's just adding cost and it just doesn't make sense. There's also a lot of confusion with respect to confusion over authority, and Wayne put it very well in here with the fireworks. And that's not the only one that's out there, but I have the authority under a municipal open air burning bylaw to cancel all permits. So nobody's allowed to put a fire in if I say no. The province can put a restricted fire zone in, which could stop all fires in my municipality and any other in the fire zones. So now there's some confusion over who's actually putting in a restricted fire zone. So if they put one in first, I don't have any say in it. It's just in place. But then they'll say to me that, okay, well, you've got to enforce your open air burning because it's not our reg, if you will, it's yours. And it's like, well, I didn't actually put in a restricted fire zone. So there's some confusion over that. Fireworks under R, because we need to have a burning permit for fireworks. If I cancel burning permits, you're not allowed to have fireworks. That's not the case with the MNR. So we canceled permits 1 year, and then we had an incident where somebody wanted to do fireworks. I said no. They went to the ministry and said, can we have fireworks under restricted fire zone? Well, of course you can. That's not under this. So now it's like, okay, what's going on here? A huge issue down in Southern Ontario with respect to fireworks and things like that. So I was really hoping that in their updated act, that they'd start giving some authority to fire chiefs to enforce this act. You get into forest operations. In the act, there's a protocol to shut down based on fire hazard. Well, the MNR is not coming in. I don't know if they've got authority to come into the municipality to shut down Council Camp Off that's clearing some land in a forestry operation. I'm not sure how that all works. I don't have authority to do anything. And they're going to say, well, that's in your municipality. You deal with it. Well, I can't. I got nothing to do and no authority to do it. And then compounding on that, lost my train again. Yeah, it's gone. So anyway, there's a lot of confusion in my mind that they do have to square away on it with respect. And if they want to do it, then they can do it. But we can't have two acts that are potentially saying different things with and being charged by two different people under two different acts for the same issue. Right? Open air burning outside of a restricted fire zone. Well, if I have a restricted burning permits and the ministry's put in a restricted fire zone and somebody has a fire, well, they shouldn't be using the municipal avenue. They should be using the provincial avenue. There's more power there to do it. So if that's the case, then why do I have authority to do it under a different act? If you follow what I'm saying? So.
Yeah, unfortunately, I should have mentioned this when we were on the last item. What determines whether you're municipal protected or crown protection area? And, if you're a municipality, do you have the discretion to just say, okay, we want to be all crown protection area? We might have to pay more that per hectare charge, but this problem just disappears.
So my research on it, it does. So after the one major incident, I said, well, I'm billing you. Why can't I just send the whole thing into a crown protection? Because it's under an agreement. And it's unclear where the original lines came in, but I think it was based on access. And I think back in the day, the chief said, this area we can't get into, this area we can't get into. And it's a trade-off. For example, 25th Side Road is crown land, but we protect it. And that offsets so many hectares of municipal property or municipal area that we can't protect. And that's how it works. So I've done a little bit of work, not enough to bring it to you guys yet, to look at doing the whole municipality as a crown protection area. And I've talked to the ministry about it and they say, well, yeah, you can do that. What it means is that, we pay like $1.90 or something per hectare for fire protection through this agreement. And then it sets the rates out of what we pay and they pay us. So it's currently, don't quote me, but I think it's about $10,000 a year is what we currently pay. And we have for all the years. It's gone up a little bit on the hectare rate. But if we did our entire municipality, I think it's about 40 or 50,000 a year that we pay. And using the Surrey Road example, if we paid that every year, then that's like 4 years worth of protection for that one event. So it's kind of one of those cost balance things that we got to look at. And I just haven't had time to do the math and do the report to say this is what we need to do on it. And then if we do any fires that are in their area that are not structure fires, because that's not part of it, then we would bill them for the response to it. So that's where that starts coming in. It's something we have to look at, but it's, there's some work that has to get done on it to justify it.
Okay.
So the other thing that's kind of big, that's got me concerned a little bit, is these wildfire management plans. In the new act, it says that every municipality shall have a wildfire management, what do they call it? Yeah, but it's there was a word for the plan. I think it's a Wildfire Management Act, or a plan, pardon me.
Yeah.
But basically, it's a plan to put in place on how a municipality is going to deal with mitigating wildfires in their municipality. And it's like so many of the plan, like our community risk assessment, we've got to do it, and then we've got to keep it updated every year. So it's a workload thing. And my experience with our community plan that we're going to come back to at a different meeting, if we start putting that in through the province, are we going to get measured to it? And what I mean by that is, they're going to say you need to put fire breaks around this stuff. Well, how are we going to do that? If you want a fire break around Murillo, it's all private land around there. So how do I have any authority to go bulldoze a line around somebody's, right? I don't have any authority if they say get rid of dead material on properties because it's a fire hazard. That's awesome. That's what we should be doing. But I have no authority to come and say, Wayne, you got to get all that dead material out of your yard.
Property standards have that?
Not to this level. You got, 200 hectares of property that's all forested. I mean, how are we going to deal with that?
Yeah, I did see attend a fire session many years ago where they showed a town that did that. They had a diagram of the city itself. It wasn't a huge city, but, and the council had gone through all that. Designated so much land around the city was to be cleared. It was all cleared, even if it was on private property, and then the grass was cut. City made sure the grass was cut in that distance of property all around the whole city, so that if there was a fire in the brush, I don't know, it still might have gotten into the city, but the chances were really decreased.
Yeah, and those are happening, especially out west,
Mhm.
and that's great for Ignis, Atikokan,
Yeah, but
Armstrong.
what do you do for us?
Yeah, so they've got crown land all the way around them. They apply for a permit and cut all the trees down and, but how do you do that in a municipality that's got privately owned land?
Yeah. And it's a large municipality. The fire could come in anywhere.
So how's Nebing? Nebing's got twice the footprint we do.
Yeah.
With,
Yeah.
with twice the bush, like how are they gonna deal with it? So anyway, that's a little bit, I don't know what they're gonna put in these plans.
Mhm.
I'll say out loud, I did have a bad taste in my mouth trying to deal with that Fire Smart plan, which is now the community. With, I had two people in there that I questioned their fire background, telling me that, you should do more to this, but it's up to you. And it's just like, wait a minute now. Anyway, I've got concerns, and that leads into administrative penalties. So they put in administrative penalties into that act. I'm still not clear how these things work. I don't know if they're intended for the province to put administrative penalties to a municipality. So in other words, if we don't have a fire mitigation plan in place, are they gonna give us a ding or is that for us to go and hit Wayne because he's not clearing his land? I'm not sure how that's all work. I think it's a good thing. The fire chiefs is trying to get away from tickets, like smoke alarm tickets, into administrative penalties because they're much easier to administer. But I just don't know where this is going. And I get very nervous with this with respect to municipalities. And, the education part on the next one, in all the engagements, there was a lot of discussion about partnering and sharing responsibility. And that makes me very nervous because the way I see this working is the province will come out and say, our end of the deal is we're going to develop the program. We're going to make all the pamphlets and all that. We're going to send it to you in electronic, and then it's up to you to administer it to your municipality. So there's a cost that we're going to have to bear. And, when we talk about volunteers, how are we going to be able to deliver this, especially somebody like us with the area that we have? And what happens if we don't? Is this an avenue for administrative penalties? It's an opening for liability. If they have a whole campaign on smoking and we have 2 or 3 fires that are linked to smoking, which I have no authority to deal with, and all of a sudden there's a fire with cigarettes and it rips out half of our municipality and burns out half of the city of Thunder Bay, it's like, OPR, you didn't do any of this prevention program. We're sharing the responsibility on this. What's going on here? I'm speculating. It's my own opinion. But I've been down this path before and sounds good on paper, but how do you implement it? So anyway, I don't know if there's anything else to say to that. It's more just an awareness. And I'll link it back to the bylaw. That's why the bylaw is written the way it is now. It's trying to close these loops. And, we're never going to get ahead of all of them, but getting challenged or will be challenged more and more.
Okay.
But-
Councillor Calvert?
Just that one specific thing about the fireworks, that is your call on that though. If you cancel them, like they can't go to the M&R and have them. That's what we were told.
No, they can't.
No,
But it just adds a lot of confusion and a lot of, I'll say, fight on my part. When I say no, they go to the ministry, they say yes, and they fire the fireworks off. Now I'm chasing them. Now I'm
Yeah.
going through a process of charging them and into court. They start a fire. Now there's a whole battle about, it's just messy.
yeah, and that's kind of pretty lackluster on their part, not realizing that you're the authority on it, not the M&R. They should realize that themselves.
And to complicate it is provincial authority is always bigger than municipal authority. And federal authority is always bigger than municipal. So you just, it just gets ugly.
Yeah, and that's some
Because if
communication problem there that they don't
the
realize that.
fireworks had caused a fire,
Yeah,
we've got to put it out. So it's costing the fire department time and effort and dollars to put the fire out. If the fire gets too big, they might have to call the province in to dump some water, so we're gonna get a bill from them. And yeah, at the end of the day, who pays for all of this?
We do.
We do.
We fight to get our money.
Yeah.
And I look at this stuff honestly a lot differently than most because of my background. I've been down this path and it's just not a fun path to be down.
Mhm.
When, you know, I probably shouldn't say it out loud, but when you're fighting Big Brother,
No, you're right.
so what do we do about this? I don't know. Wayne put in here suggesting a working group. And I think that's something I'm gonna push through my channels just to say we need to be talking about this. And we need to be figuring out how it's gonna get dealt with.
This is an opportunity. Now you're gonna have a little bit of time before government comes back. So this is an opportunity to get together and put something together that we can send to the government or speak to our local representatives after the election.
And the scary thing is I've talked to a couple chiefs around and they're really not aware of this. They're not engaged that much on it and it's because of workload. I get all that. And in light of California, that's the norm, whether we like it or not. And, you know, so this starts turning into a very big, they're pushing it for a reason.
Oh, yeah, our turn is coming. That's the feeling I have every year. Our turn is coming one of these years. We've so far been fortunate with not having a huge fire that takes away part of our township.
Sorry,
So
road
far.
got to be 100 hectares in an hour.
Yeah. Okay. The last item we have is Resolution 56-2025, Thunder Bay District Municipal League Conference attendance. And I'm going to ask Wayne, because we don't have a copy, this will have a resolution to pass. It's been moved and seconded. If Wayne would read it and you complete it, then we can on it.
Whereas the Thunder Bay District Municipal League 2025 Conference and Annual General Meeting is scheduled for March 6, 7, 2025 at the Prince Arthur Waterfront Hotel and Suites in Thunder Bay. The following are approved to attend.
Whom on council would like to go? March 6th and 7th. Okay, so we have Councillor Viss, Councillor Peacock. No, Councillor Campoff, Councillor Calvert. We have an 8 AM MECG meeting on the 6th
That's a tentative one.
at 8
can move
AM.
that around.
Well, we could, it doesn't matter, but I just know, I'm looking at my calendar. I will not be able to attend. Be doing income tax, which I love doing.
So we'll reschedule that.
Yes, and
I don't know when this will start, but I imagine on March 6th, that doesn't start at 8. I don't know when it is. It does?
yeah,
On March 6th?
yeah, because they usually have.
the 7th or 8th.
Yeah. that's-
Okay, well, there is a conflict there. Yeah.
So we'd have to change the MECG meeting because of Councillor Campoff would be the other place.
Yeah, and if you're tied up as well.
Well, any month, I just can't go 2 days away
No.
from my work, so. And that would count, the CAO like to go to it? No? Okay, I just thought I'd ask. So we have those names listed on that resolution. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And now we have a resolution adjourning. It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the council meeting, special council meeting of February 3rd, the time being 11:19 AM. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much.